All right, so today's video is an introduction to the animal kingdom. Now, this first slide, oh yeah, joining me today is Ms. Keenberger, which some of you might have had for physical science, also an animal expert. So anyway, animals, you should know all these at this point, but animals, as we talked about, are eukaryotic, they're multicellular, they don't have cell walls, and they're heterotrophs. Now, the way that they get their nutrition is by ingestion, which means
taken through the mouth.
Yeah.
Or an opening.
Yep. And at this point, we talked about fungus. Fungus are also heterotrophs, but they digest outside their body. Animals ingest inside their body.
Remind me what eukaryotic means?
Oh, it means they have a nucleus. Okay. Shouldn't you know that? You teach biology. So anyway, this PowerPoint's going to kind of take the tone of showing different ways of comparing animals and different characteristics that some animals have. So first of all, one of the most basic divisions in the animal kingdom, which most of you have probably heard, vertebrates are animals with backbones, invertebrates are animals without backbones. Now, I have somewhat of an issue with, we tend to talk about this like we're dividing the animal kingdom in half this way, but that's sort of unfair because the vast majority of animals are invertebrates. About 95% actually. That's why when I made this PowerPoint slide, I only included one vertebrate, the penguin, whereas everything else is an invertebrate.
Do you think you could kind of go through and tell me a little bit about which type of animal each one of these are? Because I'm sure they're going to have questions.
Yeah. So towards the top, you got a tarantula wasp. We have an ascaris worm, which is a round worm. The thing that looks like kind of a ball of cotton, that is a tardigrade, also known as water bears. I can't actually tell what that. Oh, clams is next to that. Then we got some jellies, an earthworm, a fly, a cuttlefish, sand dollar, which is a living thing, lobster, got some, and then at the very bottom, going from left to right, we got an elephant ear sponge, a penguin, a sea star, and some coral.
Cool.
So those are all animals. And as you notice, only one of those are vertebrates because I was trying to represent the animal kingdom. Most are actually invertebrates. So animals can be organized in two different ways, or actually there's some that don't have symmetry. But we see two basic types of symmetry. One's called radial symmetry, and the other's called bilateral symmetry. Now, bilateral means there's really just one spot where you can cut it in half and you have two sides that are mirror images of each other. Like right now I'm making a shape that is bilaterally symmetrical because you cut it down the middle, you got two hands, right?
Right.
That's because I'm bilaterally symmetrical.
Yes, you are.
As you
Most
are
days.
as well, yeah. So, yeah, if I showed up being radially symmetrical, that'd be weird. Now, what that means is it's radially symmetrical means things are arranged around a central point. And really, this means that you kind of have like infinite amount of, the way I think of it is infinite amount of bilateral symmetry. No matter where you cut, you're going to get two equal halves. I should do this more towards the camera. No matter where you cut, it's going to be two equal halves. So, like, this is it's showing a coral or like a pot for a plant. Sea stars are radially symmetrical. Any other examples I'm forgetting?
Well, I think you've got the anatomy up there. So.
An Erlenmeyer flask, which is sitting over there. That's why I thought of that. But anyway, now, when we are dissecting, we're going to talk about these different sides of an organism, the dorsal, ventral, posterior, anterior. So, have you heard any of those words before? Pretend you're a student. Not because you're...
Dorsal. I remember something
Dorsal.
about it being on a shark.
Okay. Where is that fin on a shark? The dorsal
The one
fin.
that comes out of the water. So.
Right. Yeah. Dorsal's the... Oh, I thought that was going to come up first. But anterior is the front. Ventral is kind of where the belly is. It's defined by where the gut is. Now, the ones that people might have heard of, posterior means the end of the digestive tract where food comes out or waste comes out. And then dorsal is the very top. So it's, we think of it as the back, but really what it technically is, it's the opposite from where the gut is. Now, to show this in a human, where do you think the ventral side is of Homer?
Belly.
The belly, yep. And once again, I did this in reverse order. But yeah, posterior is...
It's more funny with him in the posterior because it's your butt area.
Yep. And then anterior is where food enters, where he's eating his donut. Dorsal is his back. Ventral is the belly. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Now, this is where it gets a little more complicated. Now, animals are typically, their cells are classified by three different layers. The endoderm, the mesoderm, the ectoderm. Okay? Now, the endoderm, now we call these germ layers, the different layers of cells, and these things develop very early on in the embryo. depending on how those actually develop, we then classify the organism. But so the endo, what does endo typically mean when you're doing your prefixes?
Inside, inner.
Yep, inside. So the innermost germ layer, so that yellow right there is the endoderm. Okay, and when those cells develop during early development, they're eventually going to become like the digestive tract and the respiratory system. Mesoderm is, what does meso mean?
Middle.
Middle, yep. So all that pink is the mesoderm. That's all the stuff in the middle. That's going to make up your muscles, your circulatory system, not the inner lining of it, but your blood vessels, things like that. And then your ectoderm is what is on the outside. That's the outermost germ layer. Now, here's why I show this to you, because in reality, all animals, this might seem a little bit dehumanizing to say this, but we're all basically a specialized tube where we have an outer layer of cells, an inner layer of cells, and then a bunch of stuff in the middle, right? Because what are ultimately, you're a tube because food goes down your mouth and out the other end, right?
Right.
Makes sense. The way I like to compare this, and mine got stolen last year, but you know those little like sea cucumber things you get at like the aquarium where you squeeze them and then they keep, I like to think of an animal as just a specialized version of that. You have an outer layer of cells, an inner layer of cells, and then everything that's in between. Yeah, and hopefully that you dream about that or something because it's kind of creepy. But anyway, so according to these germ layers, we then classify all these different phyla of animals, which we're actually going to do in class probably the day you come back from seeing this video. So when an organism has what we call a coelom, and it's shown in this picture here, the coelom is technically that little cavity, meaning an area of empty space. Now, when that coelom is lined with mesoderm on every single side, or when that cavity is lined with mesoderm, we call it a coelom. Now, in the middle, you see we have this roundworm here. Now, roundworms, they have their endoderm on the inside, and there's no mesoderm around the inside of it. It is only lining the ectoderm. Now, that's what's called a pseudocoelom, because what does pseudo mean?
False.
Yeah, false. It kind of looks like a coelom, but it's not totally a coelom. And then certain organisms do not have any body cavity on the inside. They have a digestive cavity. Now, the difference is the body cavity is the gap that is outside the digestive cavity. So you see, this organism has that digestive cavity in the middle, but there's no other cavity. So we call them acoelomates. They have what's called, do you call it an acoelom? But that means you have no body cavity present.
Right, nothing there. A means none or no.
Yeah, A means none. So here's how this little tube that you are actually forms. So every animal, first you have egg cell, sperm cell come together. They then grow and grow and grow, divide. Now this little hollow ball of cells forms, and that's called a blastula. Okay? Now when the egg is first fertilized, I skipped ahead, it's called a zygote. That zygote grows, becomes what's called a blastula. Okay? Now the next step is where you can kind of go in two different directions. So what's going to happen is a little hole is going to form. It's going to kind of cave in. It's like, imagine you have a sphere and you sort of take your two thumbs and push inwards. That little area that you've created is called a blastopore. Now, that blastopore is important because we actually classify life based on what that blastopore becomes. So if the blastopore becomes a mouth, we call that organism a protostome. Okay? If an organism's blastopore becomes the anus, we call it a deuterostome. And here's my immature way of remembering that. What comes out of the anus? Duty. Or doo-doo. So deuterostome, yeah.
I like that.
Yep, feel free to use it. So we are actually, I believe, all mammals are, or all vertebrates are deuterostomes, yep. Because that first pore that forms in our body actually becomes our anus, and then that pore continues to form until it eventually pushes all the way to the top and makes another opening at the top. That's what becomes our mouth.
Yeah.
That's all vertebrates, by the way, and echinoderms, I believe, which they don't know what are yet. But
Well, echinoderms, some of them, their mouth and their anus is the same hole.
That's true.
So
yeah.
it depends.
Yep. So I think, but yeah, most invertebrates are protostomes, and then vertebrates are deuterostomes. Now here's some easier stuff. Hopefully students know these. The difference between sexual and asexual reproduction. So most animals reproduce sexually. There are some invertebrates that reproduce asexually. So one such example of that is like hydras and some sponges. They can actually do what's called budding. And what that is you grow another organism out of your own body. So if I was able to bud another Mr. Karnstedt would just come right out the side here.
Too many. We only need one.
Yep, we do. Yeah, I would disagree. I think we need more. But anyway, so there's a good picture of budding. You can see the hydra is this is like the new organism right here where the arrow's pointing to. There's the adult. So one's coming out. That's budding. There's a slightly specialized version of this in sponges, but we're not going to get into that right now. Some more review. So another thing, and this is I think the last point to make about animals, is animals have these complex organ systems. So we're not going to cover all of them because there's actually a lot, but the really key ones you have to understand are nervous system. What does the nervous system do?
Response to stimuli.
Right. So your brain's part of your nervous system and your nerves. Respiratory system is what brings oxygen in. Now all animals need oxygen because then they use that to help break down sugars to get energy. Now your circulatory system is what actually circulates that oxygen and other nutrients throughout the body. One specific part, you do need to know this, is what's called a closed circulatory system, which we have, and an open circulatory system. So a closed circulatory system is when the blood is 100% of the time inside blood vessels. So it's in your arteries, your veins, or your capillaries, or it's going through your heart. Either way, it is always in blood vessels. Now, some invertebrates have what's called an open circulatory system. And what that looks like, and I have a picture up here, they basically have a heart, and they have a few, do you even call them arteries? They have a few blood vessels where the blood sort of comes out, and it sort of circulates and pools throughout the organism. And then there are some, they actually call them sinuses, that take up the blood and bring it back to the heart. So there's this whole area of the organism, so like its whole body, where the blood is just sort of like diffusing throughout the organism. That's why when you swat at a lot of bugs, like they get all juicy because it's not technically blood, it's called hemolymph, but it's all in that area.
And then not all circulatory systems have blood. You've got the echinoderms that are water vascular.
Right, yeah, exactly. And and even technically, like I said, like a lot of arthropods, I think you call it hemolymph. It actually uses a different, it doesn't use hemoglobin. With iron, it uses copper, but I'm getting too in detail. Anyway, it looks blue though, it's pretty cool. You ever taken horseshoe crab blood in college?
No, I like to keep as many animals alive as possible.
Oh, they were still alive, but yeah, it's like this aqua blue color, their blood. It's pretty cool. But anyway, so digestive system is the system, the set of organs you use to actually process food so you can make those nutrients available to your body tissues. And finally, that stuff's all got to go somewhere when you're done with it, so you use your excretory system to get rid of it.
Everybody's favorite.
Yep. And there is some waste, carbon dioxide specifically, that is just eliminated through your respiratory system. So not all waste is excreted through your excretory system. But anyway, I think that was our last slide. Anything to add?
I don't think so.
No? Well, thank you for helping.
Looking forward to seeing all the animals.
Cool. Thank you for helping, and we'll see you later.